Good afternoon, folks. Dustin Siggins with Proven Media Solutions. Welcome back to Cracking the Comms Code. Today we're talking with Doyle, Brian, and Joshua about what they did to beat a tough job market, to make their next move, not just wait for it, but make it happen. And so I'm actually going to kick it over to Brian first, then Joshua, and then to Doyle. And after they introduce themselves and how they were able to overcome the job market for their own particular successes, we're going to dial into how they made it happen. I'm happy to answer your questions on how you're looking for work. I know we can help you stand out over the next hour. So, gentlemen, please take it away.
Thanks, Dustin. Brian Kramer, I'm running my own sort of consultancy after looking for a job for the better part of 2 years. And um, sorry, Dustin, how deep do you want me to go into this?
30 seconds, 40
30
seconds.
seconds. Yeah, and I would say I've definitely used a newsletter and LinkedIn to help me sort of stand out amongst the crowd in what I would say a pretty noisy market. Joshua.
Johnson?
Oh, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Joshua Mansbach, corporate and product communications professional in the healthcare industry. I've been working on my own for about the past 2+ years, working with biotech, pharma companies, and public relations and communications agencies as a freelance consultant, fractional comms leader. And I've used LinkedIn and a number of different approaches to build a brand and help me amplify the value that I can bring to organizations.
Great. Should I jump in here, Dustin?
Please.
Doyle Albee. I have Prolexity PR in Boulder, Colorado. And my story is I had my own agency for, gosh, more than 20 years and incorporated that into a national firm. The fit just wasn't the best. And so I went back to an investor that had talked to me about my firm before and said, "Are you still interested in working together?" And we decided to spin up Prolexity from scratch. So I'm going to do it different, do it smaller. But it's like that line in The Social Network, right? Nobody at Harvard is looking for a job; they're looking how to create a job for themselves. And so that was kind of the approach I decided to take.
And the reason I thought of this conversation is what the job market on this for a lot of people is very difficult. Even though the macroeconomic numbers are pretty good. Job reports are good. The industry, as we talked about last week on this show, from with two recruiters and an economist, people are hiring communications professionals. The challenge is there was such an overhiring right after the pandemic or during the pandemic. And then there were two really tough years where a lot of people have been out of work. So there's this glut of really skilled people looking. And what I've observed, I've been running my company for 8 years. I've been very fortunate. We survived 2024. What I've observed though, is I've met more people who have worked in, especially corporate communications, is they're looking for jobs with really the tactics of 10 years ago. They're putting out their resume, they're trying to prepare for a job interview, they're relying on recruiters, all of which are fine. But with AI, there could be 1,000 resumes, and not every employer is using AI to sift through all the garbage. You might go through a number of interviews. They're trying to find the exact right perfect pick because the employer knows they have the power in today's market. And so what I wanted to do today was dive into how each of you made tactical and strategic decisions to stand out. Because a lot of communicators still don't know how to stand out on LinkedIn. When I suggest to people who are looking for work, they could write an op-ed under their own name, get published to showcase what they do and how they do it. They go, "Oh my God, I've never thought of that." Even though an op-ed is a standard tactic when we are acting on other people's behalf, our boss, a client, etc. So again, I'd like to start this time with Joshua because we met through LinkedIn, and you've described how being on LinkedIn has helped you get business and get job interviews, and you've done three different tactics, as I understand it, that didn't exist for you and your brand 2.5 years ago. So can you dial into what those tactics are and how you decided upon them, the value they've driven? And then we'll go Doyle and Brian likewise, please.
Sure, thanks. So I think one of the great things about being in communications is it's one of the very few professions where you don't have to be actively working in it to show that you're good at it. And you don't need a CEO to support or a product to market or a client to service to use your skills to reach people and help them. And when I started out, my objective was to create a forum for myself to show that I'm good at what I do and my ideas and work will deliver measurable value. And I started a Substack so I could demonstrate my specialty and my area of passion within comms, and that's the intersection of storytelling and strategy in healthcare communications. I committed to writing an article a week for the first year, and that was ambitious. And I hit 49, but I don't feel like I failed because it's been so effective in creating networking conversations and interviews while discussing current trends in an interview to be able to say, yeah, I recently published an article on this, and then send them an actual published link on the web. It's also resulted in being invited to contribute my content to industry publications. Then I built content pillars and I found my niche on LinkedIn and I started posting and engaging daily. And that created opportunities, including the chance to meet Dustin. As a consultant, I got projects because people were seeing my content or reading my articles and they contacted me, made my life a lot easier. It also gave me a lot of new ideas and I've used those to build my own monetized offerings. And that continues to showcase my value. And I can approach firms or companies and say, here's something I created and here's how it can serve you and your communications objectives. Working as a fractional communications leader, I got hired because company leaders already knew the value that I would bring to the team. I had meetings with people who commented, we've seen your online presence. And as a networker, I built connections, and that led to people proactively reaching out and inviting me to interview. Being on LinkedIn regularly gave me opportunities to join organizations. I recently joined the PR Club of New England and became a board member and a content contributor. And I think most importantly, I met people where we've helped each other through creating work, through sharing insights that led to work. And a lot of people I've talked to about getting started on their own online presence, they feel like, well, I need to get ready or things need to be just right. But my learning from all of this is there's no such thing as the absolute right time. I learned from every article I wrote, every post I made, every mistake I made, and there were a lot of them. And I look back on what I wrote a year and a half ago to today, and I see the progress that I've made in my personal growth, in how much I've improved as a writer and a communicator. And I would say for anyone watching this and thinking about doing something for themselves, my advice is jump in, try it. The result is not going to be good at first, but that's okay because it's going to be better than if you don't do anything. And the last thing that I want to say, and I'll close here, is in the spirit of networking and giving back, because I have gotten a lot from this community. If I can be of help with anything, send me a DM. I will do what I can.
I will just echo a lot of what Joshua just said, and I think you can summarize it in treat yourself as a client. That's just so important. And Joshua talked about setting a goal for one article a week. That's treating yourself as a client. If you know you're supposed to do a blog post for a client every week, I think everybody listening, everybody that does PR would do that without fail. And yet our own stuff, the cobbler's kids get the worst shoes, becomes, oh, it's late. I had a full day. I don't want to get to this. And it's consistency and it's getting out there. And I think your points about, looking back at your writing a year ago and how much you've improved, it probably came from a pretty high bar knowing you. But you're absolutely right. It's that muscle memory. When you're doing things for yourself and looking at things through that lens, it's helping you look under rocks for your clients in the same way that you look under rocks for yourself for things to do. My journey was a little bit different in that I never really looked for a job. I really looked for opportunities to do exactly what I wanted to do here. And what I've realized now in the last 3 or 4 months since I stood this company up with a partner is I wasn't doing as much writing and public relations and strategy and whatnot when I was running a firm with more than 20 people. There's just a lot of other things that are happening. And I didn't realize how much I missed it until I started doing it again. And it's just where I'm going to go. And I was very fortunate to have met somebody who invests in communications firms. Didn't work out the first time. And then we decided to stand one up together and we're just absolutely having a ball. And it was go out and create something for yourself.
Brian, before you jump in, I want to just ask you, Doyle, not everyone knows somebody with a lot of money who's going to invest in their company, right, or invest in their personal brand. I'd like you to dial in more into some of your thought process here, because I want people who are watching, maybe they'll pick up a little segment of what you're saying and apply it to their own lives. Again, we don't all know. Like my business partner actually did invest some money to help me get up when I started, but not everyone has that good fortune or has been in that kind of situation. Can you explain a little bit about your strategic thinking to not just be a consultant, but to actually contact an investor and why that benefited you more than launching your own consultancy without that partner? What led you there in the first place? Because again, you went into the marketing agency. I know about the time that you left, and you were kind of frustrated. It wasn't the right fit, and then you decided to go that direction. Again, helping understanding that a little bit of that journey, your mental thought process, I think will help people watching kind of come out of their own creativity.
Well, I'm going to echo some of Joshua's words again. Just get started. The big impetus for me, because I live in Boulder, Colorado, this is a story that involves a business meeting on a hike. But I went out with a good friend of mine who happens to be the CEO of the Boulder Chamber, and I was on his board for several years. And it was just kind of one of those, let's go out, catch up, haven't seen each other for a while. And he really leaned on me to say, you could probably pick up the phone and call 10 people in Boulder that would hire you for a small contract tomorrow. That, and so that's where the just do it part started for me was, okay, yeah, I can think about this. I can kind of have some analysis paralysis, and I don't want to do that. So I picked up the phone and called Blake, who's my partner, and we started working on things immediately. And you're absolutely right. From not everybody has a Blake in their life or your business partner, Dustin, but what you do have is contacts. You have people you can talk to, and you can just really start to stand things up in the background and really get your LinkedIn up and cooking. If you want to do a Substack, that's great too. But a lot of what I did was just put together, for all intents and purposes, a nice PowerPoint and just send it to about 30, 40 people that I had worked with over the years, that had referred me, that had done, just all sorts of things, and just said, hey, I'm excited. This is what I'm doing. No sales pitch. No, they know what I'm asking for. It's like, Doyle wants a reference. Okay. And lo and behold, a law firm referred me to one of the counties here in Colorado, and I'm now on a retainer with them. So it's back to, is it Gretzky that said you miss 100% of the shots you don't take? And so even if you want to do things in parallel path, but the thing that I really can't stress enough is treat yourself like a client. The day's not over until you've done all your client work, which includes yourself.
Brian?
Love that, Doyle and Joshua. I mean, just great sentiment. I would say I almost sit like in the Venn diagram of the middle of the two of you, which is kind of interesting. So just over about a year and a half ago, I found myself looking for work. And really there's a second time in about 2.5 years. And so I took a real big step back, and I think this is my advice for a lot of comms people. Like, let's be frank, it's noisy out there. There's, because of AI, like LinkedIn can be noisy. And I really took a step back to think like, what is what are the types of content that I engage with most likely on LinkedIn? LinkedIn is where you sort of need to be present, but at the same time, you know, I wasn't one to go out there with my own personal opinion. To Doyle's point, we tend to do really good work for our clients, not for ourselves, right? So, in that vein, I wasn't going to say this company did a good job with their public relations or this one did a bad job or whatever it might be, right? But what I noticed was that when someone else did that, I actually was very inclined to comment or hit at the very least smash the like button. And so if you pull the thread on that,
Mhm.
I assumed that there were lots of PR people like myself that we like to do PR for other people and not for ourselves. We want to kind of figure out how to get into the conversation, but at the same time, maybe not quite ready to, say this is how you should pitch a reporter or something of the sort. And, you know, being inspired from an old show from the 80s called This Week in Baseball, I came up with This Week in PR Takes, which is basically a one-stop sort of like daily or excuse me, weekly place where you can just read about some of those opinions. My actual hope, while selfishly, yes, I wanted to put myself out there in a little bit more of an authentic way. I also wanted to make sure that I didn't want to create noise in the market and come at it from a different perspective and help others that were probably like-minded to myself and hope that like we're all sort of collectively moving the industry forward and sort of creating conversation. So and it has helped me because like I said, I love that Joshua had the ambitious goal of posting once a week. I probably wouldn't do that for myself, even if took Doyle's approach and said like I'm gonna treat myself like a client. But if I treat everybody else like a client and I make it so that I'm going to do just a weekly sort of bulleted list with a little bit of my own spin, I found that that was the way that I was going to like be authentically out there and not just create noise. And so when you fast forward to today, it has certainly helped me. I'm currently not looking for a job. I've sort of doubled down on consultancy and it helped me both stand out in the interview process and with my consultancy because on the top level I'm able to say like look at the audience that I can create and some of like the content that I'm able to create and that it actually sticks and it's not just noise. But secondly, I can also point to show how much I just love this profession and I'm working with peers to try to move it forward. So it's just been a great ride. And I would say the third part is that actually, I think as all three of you have experienced possibly, I it also has an unintended consequence of creating moments of joy for people because sometimes they wake up on a Friday and they're like, "Oh my goodness, someone in my industry thought that my LinkedIn post from Tuesday was like really valid." And like they get to sort of see themselves shine for a brief moment. And I can't say that was my sort of goal, but it's been an absolute joy to see that as an unintended consequence that like other people get to sort of have a moment of happiness as a result.
So, Brian, I'll push back on you a little bit. I think you absolutely are treating yourself as a client. And I think the important thing is here, and you kind of hit on it, you don't, I'm not saying treat yourself as a client and do, an article a week like Joshua did, unless that works for you. And treat yourself like you're treating yourself like a client because you publish on Fridays like clockwork. It's a different kind of approach. But isn't that the magic of doing client work? There is no one size fits all. And so we have to figure out how our skills and what we want to do and the type of folks we want to reach works within our own skill set and how to make that happen. And to your point, what's a different take? What's a different thing? We don't, the whole world doesn't just need another, here's how AI is changing the PR industry kind of spin. Instead, let's really aggregate those voices together, begin to put them together. I've met a ton of great folks, just kind of linking around like that. Dustin and I met on LinkedIn, even though we've never actually worked together. And I just think it's consistency and just, I like we all love timesheets so much, but I actually do keep track of my own time on my own business to make sure that I'm truly doing things to treat myself as a client.
That's a
Doyle,
good
you
point.
raise an interesting point with
Sorry, John.
sorry, Brian. I was just going to kind of jump in on the treat yourself as a client because I think that it can mean different things to different people. And I think Doyle's point is
Absolutely.
well taken in how he characterized, Brian, what you're doing. My perspective on it when I set out for my own goal was more about the expectations that I set for myself. And I imagined that people had expectations of me as if my readers, my subscribers to my Substack were my clients, and that I pictured them waiting for my content. And that really helped me stay on track and keep focused and think to myself, okay, I need to find an article that is going to satisfy my readers. I need to find a topic that is going to allow me to create that and meet my criteria for what I expect of
Excuse me.
myself, which is coming up with something unique, an angle that isn't, here's what AI means to the PR industry, but something that explores an aspect of communications that I can say almost with certainty that nobody else has explored. And as I look down the menu of articles that I've written over the past year and a half on my Substack, I can say that 90% of them, probably nobody tackled those topics. And that makes me proud. And in that respect, if I'm treating myself as a client, I think I'm doing a great job at it.
That's great. Yeah, Doyle, I guess I never really thought about it in terms of treating as a client. I definitely do the same thing as you where for my own little time tracking, I have like my own little personal like not code, but sort of space to make sure that I'm not like over-indexing on myself, but at the same time, creating some time during the week that like I am focusing on, again, even if it's just a newsletter or even like a session like this. Just I think it's a good point. I never really thought about it. That's good perspective for sure.
Well, I think the other thing too is I think part of the reason the comms job market is so tough right now is just uncertainty. Bad markets, people know how to do things. Good markets, people know how to do things. And when it gets uncertain, everybody just kind of says, let's tap the brakes and see how this all shakes out. And I think that's what AI has done to us. But it's interesting that none of the things that we've talked about doing here could you train a robot to kind of do this? Yes. Would it be anywhere close to as good? Not at all. But I think the important thing to remember, I'm a huge fan of Scott Galloway and his podcast, and he did one called Apocalypse No last week. And the whole thrust was AI is not going to take your job. And there was a line in there that just really stuck with me. He said, nobody walks around Google and says, well, I'm all out of good ideas. Guess I'll go home. It's I've got all this stuff that I just can't get to. So when something new like AI comes along, it doesn't take the work away from us necessarily. It frees us up to think of new things or things that have been on the back burner forever that we've wanted to do. And I think we're just in that trough right now where we don't know what that looks like yet, but it feels like we're starting to pull out of that a little bit.
Well, and dial into that, Doyle. I'm breaking my 2 second of silence rule because I've been quiet for like 5 minutes. And it's hard for me.
Good
But
job, Dustin. You did a really good job.
It's steam coming out of your ears.
yeah, exactly. The the thing that Brooke and Jessica, the two recruiters, we spoke in September, we spoke in January, we did a panel last week. The thing they have said consistently, along with Mike Fuse, who's an economist, not in our industry, but he works for a century-old economic consultancy. So he has all the data. And what they've all said is that the economy is growing, that things are better. There was overhiring during the pandemic. There was a ton of uncertainty because of it was fear about inflation. So everyone held on to their money. 2024 brought a lot of uncertainty because, oh, who's going to win the election and how is that going to impact 1, 2, and 5 year plans? And then tariffs. Tariffs created massive uncertainty on a global scale. So all these, and then with AI as the sort of the macro factor, there was this glut of people looking for work, and there still is because companies have a lot of power and they know they can take their time, but you do 7 interviews and everything else. And that's what I wanted to chat with the three of you is how to take an unusual path. And Brian, starting a newsletter is definitely unusual, right? Most people don't do it in the way that you did it for the reason you did. Doyle, finding an investor is even more unusual. And Joshua, the reason I wanted you on is not because there's nobody on LinkedIn. They have 1.3 billion users or whatever. But the thing that I've observed, and I've never worked at corporate comms, but in the last year and a half, I've become connected to on LinkedIn and met dozens of people who are all high-level communications professionals who, when I suggest write an op-ed under your name, they go, wait, what? They look at me like I have 12 heads. We've all written op-eds for our clients. They talk about posting on LinkedIn, and I'm like, well, it's not just about posting. Well, what am I going to say that's unique? I don't know. I just post about kind of best practice stuff. I post about the basics. Stuff I'm writing today on LinkedIn for the most part could have been written 30 years ago if I was, if LinkedIn existed and I wasn't 10 at the time. Like what I'm saying isn't AI. It's not the next generation stuff. It's just good fundamentals. But the thing I think a lot of people miss is that when you treat yourself like a client, writing a great op-ed or a great press release or having a great pitch means nothing if you don't get it out there. The hardest and most impactful work in PR is doing the outreach. It's getting the placement. It's setting up the interview. On LinkedIn, yeah, you have to have your posts, but that's only 20% of the work. The rest of it is people tell me all the time they think I'm everywhere. Doyle, I think what's in our prep call, you said you think there's 3, or Brian, you think there's 3 of me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Brian said in our prep call, I think there's 3 of me. That's because I have systematically set myself up so that, and I'm going to share my screen and then I will get off my little pedestal here, is I have every Wednesday, Brian gets an email from me because I want to be included in his newsletter. So these are all the links you can see. Like he's not yet tired of hearing from me because he's on the show, but I've marked it on my calendar. Send Brian Kramer links. And he told me until after this show, probably a lot of people do it, but until this week, it was only me, and then Doyle did it. I've also started sharing other people's stuff that I see with Brian. And that started off as a way for me to be self-promotional. I thought, oh, Brian's going to get sick and tired of it. And then he said to me once, you're helping me. You're making my job easier to include links. And he doesn't always include me. I probably get included between 1 and 2 times a month, which is very generous of him. But that doesn't happen if I don't send it to him. So I'm treating myself like a client every Wednesday morning by sending Brian my content. Sometimes he includes it, sometimes he doesn't, but it builds the relationship. So again, treating myself like a client beyond the content that's created, but actually getting the content out there.
I think the one common theme across everything that you just spoke about, Dustin, goes back to the very core of what an op-ed article is, and they all start with the
Right.
same word, opinion. And
Right.
in comms, I think Doyle, you said it earlier, we're terrible at doing PR and comms for ourselves, but we're great at it doing it for other people. And what I tried to teach myself when I started writing op-eds was that I have opinions on lots of things, and sometimes they're really well informed, and sometimes they're just terrible takes, but they're still my opinion, and that's okay. And that's what makes them valuable. And if you translate that to not just writing an op-ed article for publication in a trade outlet, but in the posts that you make on LinkedIn, or the way you approach creating a newsletter or a Substack, or your philosophy on building an agency like Doyle did, then you're bringing value. And that value shows up in what you're learning, how you're shaping thoughts. And when you're in an interview and someone says, well, what ideas do you have for us? Now, all of a sudden, you've got those opinions, and those are easily pivoted and translated to here's the ideas based on what you learned by writing those Substack articles or publishing that newsletter or showing up every day on LinkedIn. And those experiences form the basis for our opinions and our perspectives on how we can bring value to the companies that we're interviewing with.
Well, and I want to jump in too and say, I think it would be easy to take away from this conversation. It's like, well, but everybody's writing for PR Week and PR Daily and Bulldog Reporter, and how am I ever going to break through? They must just get thousands. And yes, that's true. That doesn't mean don't try. But let's say that you want to really target Joshua's case, healthcare. Um, there, I will tell you right now that not a single client that I have at Prolexity reads PR Week. Why? Because they're technologists, they're county commissioners, they're developers, they're whatever it is. So if I can reach them where they are, and maybe you write for a technology publication, a healthcare publication, but give it that thought of here's what you might not be thinking about in your healthcare communications. You get something like that in health management technology and talking about how AI can improve things. I'm just kind of riffing on probably a pretty weak idea here, but that's the point, is to make sure that you spread your umbrella out there as far as you can.
Doyle, I would also, again, pull the thread on that. Like, look for opportunity. Again, about a year ago, I was still interviewing for jobs, and yes, the newsletter certainly helped sort of showcase my passion for the industry. But when I say look for opportunity, I had one client that I sort of had about a year ago that was almost like a trial for a full-time gig, and it didn't work out. But I sort of saw opportunity that they still needed help with PR and comms, so I'm still working with them as a freelancer. And there was another interview that I had that started about a year ago, went through most of the summer, and in the end, it was sort of like a big kind of global company, and they ended up pulling the role in September. So I shot my shot, and I was like, well, if you think there's still a need here, but there's not a full-time role, what about working with me on a consultant basis, right? And then lastly, even as I started my newsletter, like look for opportunity. Most of you that read it will know that every once in a while there is a sponsored post that I work with from Meredith, and that's because I saw opportunity there, and she and I had sort of connected over the past year, and like it's just another way for exposure and all the rest of it. But like those things all happen where, no joking aside, but like if you see something, say something. So you don't. In Doyle, to your point about the Wayne Gretzky quote, no one's gonna come to you with opportunity. But I have found that if you reach out, like literally this morning, I was on a call with an investor from an old client of mine to let her know that I had started my consultancy, and on top of recurring work, I can help technology companies with their funding announcements. And she was like, great to know. I didn't know that. So if she has a portco that's looking to this maybe doesn't have the need for a full-time PR person, but just needs some help for that big moment when they announce their series A or B, that she can pull me in. So it's yes, it's where can I do like an op-ed, but it's more like holistically, where are the opportunities and where can I shoot my shot? And the worst thing that happens is someone doesn't answer or says no. So you might as well try.
I can jump in on that, Brian, because you've said something, and you've said it, but I want to say it in a little bit of a different way.
Yeah.
Who else is doing the Spider-Man, I mean the TWIP newsletter that we're talking about, right? And so, sorry, that's a joke that Brian and I have done where,
Yeah. Yeah.
it sounds like TWIP if you're a Spider-Man nerd like me. And so, Joshua, you're in New York. Do you see Spider-Man frequently?
All the time. In fact,
Okay.
the fictional home of where he grew up, where Peter Parker grew up, is not too far from my neighborhood.
And
Which one
so,
though? Is it Andrew Garfield or it's
Team Toby Maguire.
yeah,
okay. There
exactly.
you go.
And so, but when you did that, Brian, you found a newsletter that no one else was doing. A decade ago, when I was a journalist, an organization, a small nonprofit, we were at a conference, and he said, "What do you think about this idea I have?" I said, "I don't know. It seems like kind of a waste, and probably is going to distract you from your actual job as director of comms." Well, that little blog he created actually became a really niche media outlet. And when his related organization was at the U.S. Supreme Court for a major case in 2018, that little sort of blog was being republished and cited widely across half of the political space. And it became massively important for that little niche because now they're widely exposed beyond any audience they'd ever had before. They found a hole in the market. And I think, Joshua, to your point earlier, not a lot of people have your experience in healthcare comms. So when you're writing an op-ed or a LinkedIn post about this, you might be one of 30 people who could write it, one of 10 who is, and one of 5 who's writing with your exact point of view out of the 1.3 billion people on LinkedIn. And I think that's what you're talking about, Brian, when you talk about taking your shot. It's not being scattershot. It's looking for those holes in the market that you can take advantage of.
Well,
Dustin, I would actually drill that down one more level when you
For
were
sure.
talking about the 1 in 500, the 1 in 50, the 1 in 10. Bring that
Yep.
down to 1 of 1, because every one of us on this call and everyone that's listening and watching now is an N of 1. And their value proposition is simply the fact that they're the only one that has that specific perspective and the experiences that inform it.
Sure.
One of the articles that I wrote on my Substack that I was most proud of was a piece called I'm Me, which is all about how your value proposition is the fact that you're the only one who has had the experiences that formed your point of view. And taking that into how you're going to make yourself stand out in the job market, it's that philosophy that helped me find opportunities to stand out. And as Brian, you were saying, shoot your shot.
Well, and I'm gonna throw out a phrase here that's gonna make everybody in this call either cringe or laugh or whatever. But how many times have we all been asked by a client? It's like, hey, I need you to do something for me that's gonna go viral. Okay. But flip that around. You never know what's going to go viral. I mean, I think we've, Dustin, you and I have talked about this. There have been times when I've pitched stories to reporters. I'm like, this is going to be easy. And I just couldn't get much traction. And then you come out with something, you go, well, I don't know about this, but I'll give it my best shot. And it goes nuts. The same thing can happen. Your example of the small blog that became critical for Supreme Court cases. You just never know when something's going to hit, and that's your thing. Again, I don't want to encourage scattershots, but don't just because a blog doesn't or a podcast or a blog doesn't have thousands and thousands of followers. If we're all sole practitioners here or small companies, we don't need thousands and thousands of clients. We need 10 of the right ones, and you never know where those are going to show up.
One of the things that I've learned in the last couple of years, as I've gotten 2.5 years ago, I knew 25 people in the communications world. And we pivoted the whole company to target communications, the consultants, agencies, and in-house teams to hire us, to subcontract to us. And it's been spectacularly successful. And I think part of that is because, to your point, Doyle, about the cobbler's kids that have bad shoes, I'm the opposite of most people in PR. I got my start as an opinion columnist. I actually found my wife and I were doing some spring cleaning, and one of my posts next week, actually, I think it's next week, we'll talk about how I ran across some of my first columns that I ever wrote. And I'm really glad the internet wasn't around to see them and record them and have people find them. As my father put it at the time, Dustin, you're 18 and you write like you're 18. And I didn't know what that meant. Now I'm 40 and I do. But when I look back at that, I got my start as an opinionator. Then I got into journalism and PR. But most PR people, most communicators are behind the scenes. And I have a sample of about 10 people that I've given the following advice to. And it's interesting to see the difference between the agency people and the in-house people. What I've encouraged people to do is, do you have 10 people? This goes back to something you actually said, Doyle. Do you have 10 people in your network who trust you, know you, have a problem they know that you can solve, and have money to pay you that you can reach out to in the next 3 months? And then do you have a list of 30 to 40 people over the next 6 months who might be able to have one of those, but fill in all the rest? So they know you really well, they trust you, they might have the pain point, they might trust your solution, but they do have budget, for example. The agency people all say, yeah, absolutely. The in-house people all say, oh my God, no. And I was always surprised. These were in their 40s, maybe the early 50s. They've been at global corporations. They were so burrowed into doing their work that they had never in their entire career put themselves first. And so I think the biggest takeaway from this conversation for people who are struggling to find work, struggling to break through, is yes, treat yourself as a client. Make sure you figure out the hole and shoot your shot. But most importantly is go out and make sure that you take advantage of the network. One of our biggest pieces of business we've gotten to date came from a referral from somebody I hadn't talked to in 10 years. I put up a crappy little LinkedIn post in 2022. He liked it. I showed him a note and said, hey, thanks for engaging. Let's see everything you're supposed to do. Direct business with him. And it led to a referral that led to $120,000 in business over 8 months. And that was someone I hadn't talked to in 10 years. So make sure you take advantage of your network, but do so with the idea of, how would I advise a client to do the same communication strategy? And how do I find the pain point and become the solution?
I
Completely
love that.
agree.
I'm surprised about the in-house versus agency only because, but to your point, Dustin, like I've been in-house prior to going on solo basically for about 10 years, but it was all startups. And I've actually found that network has also been helpful because when you're at a tech startup, and I'm in Boston too, the ecosystem is pretty tight. Like lots of times people either start their own thing, go to another startup, so on and so forth. And so like the network has actually worked for me a little bit in that way, but I was never at like a big, global company.
I, I need to provide a little more clarity. And I'm glad you said that, Brian. I mean people in the industry who could hire you, right? So you're
Oh, gotcha.
you're looking to become the head of comms or CCO. There's a very select number of people who could be your peer, an influencer, or a decision maker to hire you if you're looking for a
Yeah.
job. Or the CMO who could actually pay enough to have a high level consultant or that agency come on board as a partner. That number of people is very small. And so that's more the kind of network that I'm talking about.
I
Got it.
think
That makes sense.
when it comes to networking, I've found that it's not often a direct step one to step two connection that gets you an opportunity. It's a step
Yep.
one to step two to 2A to 3B, back to one, over to four, and up to seven. Working
Yep.
with a specific client, for instance, they know somebody that they introduce you to. You realize that you have a common connection. You reconnect with them, and they introduce you to someone else. So a lot of times it's not a direct route. It's much more abstract and circuitous, but you get there eventually. But it all has to start with showing up regularly, building a brand, and creating something of value. And when I first started out on LinkedIn, one of the philosophies that I learned was LinkedIn is like your savings account. You need to put money in before you can get anything out of that. And this same principle applies to LinkedIn. You have to show up with the expectation of you're not going to get anything until you give something. Until you show up to help somebody, you're not going to get that help. So that I think is an important piece that a lot of people kind of misstep when they have their expectations sort of pre-planned for what they're going to get out of LinkedIn. Expect to come in and help someone else before you get anything, and chances are you're going to get the payout yourself a lot sooner.
And so,
And let's not overlook volunteering too.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure a lot of folks are doing this, but I've gotten a ton of business that has turned into business because somebody called me and said, "Hey, can you do this thing? I'm starting a new company and I'm going to do my first press release. Can you just put eyes on it for me? Come back and give them some suggestions." And I bet 7 times out of 10, those have turned into something. And the other three, maybe the company didn't go, it wasn't, nobody ever said, "Well, gee, you did a bad job on that. We're not going to call you again." You have to be careful of your own time. You can't say yes to everybody. I get all that, but it's even you take that philosophy to LinkedIn when somebody posts a question and I have a point of view, it's like, let's take some time to answer that and hear and be thoughtful about it. I think sometimes, and again, back to treating yourself as a client, would a client pay you to go on LinkedIn and just smash the like button over and over? Probably not. That's not a big deal. But will they pay you to come up with thoughtful places? What should be reposted with comment? What should just be reposted? Where does a comment go? How do I do this? How do I expand that? But at the base of it all, it's not just how do I get my name out there? It's did I have something thoughtful to say and add to this conversation? And those are the things that surface. I'd rather make 10 thoughtful comments than 50 likes.
Yeah, and comments that are not AI generated to that point is extensively more impactful and valuable, especially to the person that made the post.
Exactly. Well, if I get one more email that says, "Hey, I saw your work on insert client here, and that was really interesting, and I can help you get 50 more like insert client here." It's like, come on, guys.
And they also make
You're gonna,
Wikipedia pages. Um,
yeah.
um, and I would also say, like, you know, now that I've sort of doubled down on this consultancy, it's do good work and be a good human. Like,
right.
I have found that those two things together, and sometimes do good work doesn't always mean like, you're in the Wall Street Journal. Sometimes it could mean you struck out, but you tried your flipping best, and like you can give some credible answers to your client as to what happened here. And if you're a good human on top of that, I'll tell you the best messages that I got, not the ones Doyle, that you just described, but like I'll get a text or a LinkedIn message or an email from someone that says, "So and so recommended that I reach out to you." And it's like, and Joshua, to your point, it took a lot of steps for that message to come in, but like that is like the best feeling in the world. And if you just carry yourself in a way that like you're gonna try to do your best and you're gonna try to at least, you know, be a good person about it all, like the world tends to reward you in the long run. It just sometimes isn't exactly linear.
And again, it doesn't have to be something where you're, as to Doyle's point, like I got 5 kids. The oldest is about to turn 8 in 3 months. I don't have a lot of time for volunteering. I'm volunteering my time all day. My wife does more volunteering in her time because we're homeschooling too. But when I'm on LinkedIn, I really try to engage on 15 to 20 people's posts every day. Yes, it gins up the algorithm. Yes, it benefits me. But also I know it helps, like it gins up the algorithm for my benefit as well. But I also know I'm helping other people by commenting. I'm engaging them. I'm creating conversation and hopefully creating a little bit of that community. But the other thing too is finding a way to volunteer, if you will, in a way that fires your shot. So in my case, I started this show. I started on a whim, thinking I do it once a month. I've done it every week since the first week of March last year, except for around Christmas. I skipped 2 weeks. And we have 3 people every week. And sometimes about a third of my guests I've never met beyond a DM on LinkedIn until they're on the show. I threw my shot out there. People liked it. Okay, great. Now we've been doing it every week ever since. I have no idea how. And we've expanded what the show is, and we've added more on the back end. Similarly, when I meet, a lot of times I meet people, it's because I'm interviewing them for an op-ed I write. For me, because again, my target audience is Doyle. It is all three of you and everyone who's watching because we work the comms industry. So I want to be included in Brian's newsletter because that gets me in front of my target audience. But a lot of times it's, hey, so I saw this post. Do you want to be interviewed on my op-ed about XYZ topic? That ends up at PR Daily, PR Week, or Dwyer's or somewhere similar. Now, that is the softest of openings to build a relationship. But the first thing I've done is volunteer to include that person in my content. And now everyone's benefiting. So again, it doesn't have to be a high cost, high risk volunteering as long as you have your shot lined up correctly.
And I think
Absolutely.
the idea of good purpose in PR is something that we all practice when it comes to our clients and showing how the company is a good corporate citizen, whether it's reducing your carbon footprint or giving back to the community by creating jobs. We're showing good purpose for the organization that we're representing. We could do the same thing for ourselves. And the volunteerism can be as simple as taking the time to, one of the things that I enjoy doing personally is giving back by helping people that are just getting started in the industry, because I've had a number of people that have helped me over the course of the years. And I figure if I can give back by sharing the benefit of the experience that I've accumulated with someone who is in the position that I used to be in, that's really worthwhile. And if I see that person then turn around and get a job, that's so satisfying. And yeah, that doesn't help me beyond the personal satisfaction, but that personal satisfaction is really more than enough.
Unless that person 5 years later is in a position where they can hire you as a consultant or
That helps.
something in
That certainly
capacity.
does help. And I
Yeah.
hope that all the people that I've worked with over the years get that opportunity for themselves, not for me.
But
So
I even, pull on that thread. I'll steal Brian's line here. But like I'd love to speak at colleges. I never turn down. I get calls regularly to go up to see you and speak or whatnot. And I remember one time I gave a talk, and turns out there was somebody that was in a hiring position that was getting her master's in communications that night, came up to me afterwards and said, "Hey, I'd really like to talk." And it became a client. I mean, did I speak because I thought there might be a client in there? No. I enjoy doing it. It's a good way to give back. I definitely have a point of view. I can usually warp a couple of young minds while I'm there. But again, you never know where those opportunities are going to come from. But where they don't come from is sitting at home watching Netflix.
So we got about 10 minutes left. So anyone watching, please, if you have any questions, please ask them. I do want to swing back with a real tight focus here for the last few minutes. The goal of this conversation was to help people who are struggling to find work, whether it's a full-time job, try to find consultant clients, etc. Try to break out from the noise. Because again, this isn't 2015 where LinkedIn is your billboard and you apply for a job. Not only has AI changed the game, not only, there's a lot of different factors, but specifically within communications, we are still in this recovery period from the overhiring during COVID, the uncertainty of inflation, of the risks of inflation that kept corporations were hoarding money, then the uncertainty of 2024 on the election, 2025 with tariffs. We're still coming out of that, and the economy is slowly getting stronger for the comms industry, but it is a grind. And so a lot of people are burned out. So again, I want to take the last few minutes here and have us talk about, kind of going back to the beginning of the show, how you came around to the shot that you took, Doyle, finding an investor, Brian, your newsletter, Joshua, the number of communications tactics that you've implemented for yourself for the first time in the last year and a half, how you were able to say, this is the shot that I'm going to take that's going to help me break out. And for me, when we shifted my whole company to LinkedIn, because it was going to target the communications industry, I had no idea if what I was going to say was interesting or valuable. We just set up a strategy. We admittedly barely had the cash to hire a consultant who helped us figure out our LinkedIn strategy. What I realized over time, though, was, for example, there's a line I use called speaking C-suite. In fact, it's going to be an episode of the show soon on how there's a new core competency for communicators, and it's learning to speak C-suite. Speak the bottom line. Learn how to speak to how executives speak. Otherwise, it's just jargon to them. And you're less valuable, which means you're not likely to have a job or have a client. Things like that other people weren't saying as frequently. I wasn't literally the only person saying it, but among a lot of the people who are on LinkedIn, I was one of the rare ones saying it. So it was just being present for a year and a half helped me figure out what my shot actually was when where I could stand out. And I was very fortunate that my business did well enough that I was able to take that time to figure that out. Other people may not have as much time. So I do want to have Brian, Joshua, Doyle just dial back to the beginning of the show and why you took this shot that brought you on the show, how you thought through it, and how it's directly helped you break through that very busy crowd of communicators looking for jobs and clients.
Do you want to go?
I'll kick that.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just asking. You should go.
No, I want to hear a Doyle analogy first. I want to hear.
Yeah, he's got good one-liners.
Yeah.
Let's see if I can come up with one on it. It's so much pressure. Now, I think for me, what it was, and I would encourage people to look at this. I mean, that this isn't the time to talk about burnout and all those kind of things, but we work in a tough industry that is tough to measure. It's tough to get results. It's not as controllable as a lot of other things. And then when you pile on 60, 70-hour weeks and financial stress and all those kind of things, I mean, 3 agency owners in the last 5 years have taken their own lives in Colorado alone. And I think we need to take a step back and recognize that. So what I really did for me was take a step back and say, what am I most excited to do? What if I could craft my day? What would that look like? And it really reminded me, and I use this word a lot. I had the fastest growing company under 5 million in Boulder County in 2022, I believe, and I was kind of seduced by that. And it was fun, and I got to go pick up awards, and I was speaking and having a good time, great staff. And at the same time, I really missed writing news releases. I missed knowing reporters. I missed the actual mechanics. So I wanted to structure something that worked for me. And that's where I took a step back and then started to run it by close friends, my friend at the chamber, and say, what do you think about this? What do you kind of go in there? And I look for people, and I forget who taught me this phrase, but I always liked it. Front stabbers, right? You want to go to somebody and not have them, be like AI. That's the best idea ever, and you should call it this. And you want somebody that goes, okay, here's the pitfalls. I'm going to support you. Here's where I think you've got a blind spot. That to me is a front stabber, and I mean that as an absolute compliment. And that helped me kind of adjust things. But start with where would you like to be? Create your own job in your brain, and then figure out where the shot is to go make it happen.
Yeah. Brian?
Yeah, I would just say once again, look at the market. A lot of noise, but it doesn't mean that everyone's doing everything. Find out where there's holes and opportunity, and then think about how you can add value to that noise so that is not noise, quite frankly, and do it in an authentic way. So that way, whatever someone is putting out there, it doesn't come across as like, contrived or, kind of like misaligned. Like I legitimately love giving shout outs to people. It's actually why we all do PR, right? If you really boil it down. Like, and so I actually just get to do that right now once a week, and it has absolutely helped me. And so I would say, think about how you engage with content, what you do, and chances are there's going to be someone else like-minded, and that's going to sort of create more and more opportunity. And I would also just echo what Joshua said at the very beginning. It is flipping tough out there. There's no two ways around it. Please feel free to hit me up with a DM if there's anything I can do to help someone out there. Lots of people over the years have helped me, and it's like literally the least I can do to pay it forward. So if there's anything I can do out there, by all means, please reach out.
+1.
Good one-liner, Doyle. Once again.
I'll jump in to close it out and then turn it back over to Doyle for his one-liner. But I think for me, the experience and the advice for job seekers in this economy, I've found that really honing in on what's happening in your niche industry versus trying to be everything to everyone has been important because a lot more companies are being so discerning that they don't believe any longer that if you're in healthcare comms, that you can easily transition to fintech, or if you're in CPG, you could easily transfer to aesthetics. It's not as easy as it once was. Even though we as comms pros know that we can do it, the companies that we're interviewing with are a little bit more skeptical. So focus on your sector. And that leads me to where I really found the most success personally. And that was trend spotting, because that led me to identify and diagnose the problem that people were struggling with. And for me, it was realizing that PR and return on investment in comms was really centering in on integrating LLM visibility. And folks were struggling with how to measure that. So then I created the solution and I built a concept called Earned AI Search. And if you read my Substack, you'll see why it's different than GEO that a lot of comms pros are focusing on. And it's really critical for PR. And then the last step was actually bring it to life, not just have the idea, but I spent the time to build something and then I gave it away. And most every article I write will give away a free strategy framework. And that's the deposit in the savings account analogy that I was talking about earlier. Give that away and someone is going to realize that, okay, if this person came up with it, chances are they're the one that's best suited to implement it. Let me give them a call. And that's how that organic business growth starts coming in. So if you're still looking to build a consultancy or want to get into it, I think following that approach might yield the fastest path towards success, at least in the short term, while you continue your job search.
I want to really echo that. I think too many people are too concerned with, gosh, if I share all this information, they'll just take it and do it themselves. And there's probably some bad actors that may or may not do that. But buying a copy of Microsoft Word does not mean you're going to be a New York Times bestselling author next week. There's a lot that goes into it. And I think when people are looking for more experienced consultants like everyone on this call, it really does come down to, I could try to go figure that out on my own, but this person seems to have it wired. Let's at least start a conversation.
And I want to dial into a couple of things you all said. Doyle, to your point, and to Joshua and Doyle, your last couple of points, when I started my company, I gave nothing away for free. My sister had started singing at 18 and professionally at 18. And people would say, "Oh, can you sing at my kid's birthday party? I'll give you a slice of cake." And she was horribly insulted because no one would go to my father, who at the time ran a roofing company, and say, "Can you fix part of my roof for free?" So Katie at this time was working with my father. He was her business partner to a degree. And she said, no, I'm not going to do that for your kid. No offense. And within a year, she was making $300. This is almost 20 years ago, $300 per show, plus making another $600 in selling CDs because she took herself seriously. So I was really burnt out on this idea of giving things away for free, especially when early in my career, people would say, "Oh, can you give me this list of contacts or send this pitch for this cause we both care about?" And I was like, no, this is my business. And it's actually your business too. Political consultant, XYZ. But what I've learned is that if you give things away that are easy for you to give away, then you're probably not putting that much time and effort behind it. But if, to Joshua's point, if you dial into where you have a unique knowledge, then you're not offering an opinion, you're offering insights. Versus everyone has a hot take, but I prefer to have a value take, which is why I do a lot less commentary on news, which probably lowers my engagement on LinkedIn for sure. But I think it increases the quality and the authenticity components because I don't have to apologize and retract everything and retreat and apologize and cause self-inflicted injury. And so I think that as you are thinking through how to give things away, I'll follow my wife's advice. If you only spend up to a certain amount of time and energy that you don't feel like you lost it if it doesn't go the way you want. And then two, remember that some people will always be scumbags, but the people that you're seeking who are high quality are not going to take it and run. They're going to take it and run to you, not run away from you.
Right. Well, I want to even just say when I say do free things, but Joshua's example, he didn't pitch a news release for free for a charity. He instead wrote something that he gave something to free for, I don't know how many Substack subscribers you have, but hundreds, thousands of people, right? That's a very good use of your time. And if you'd have kept that inside, you might not have people running to you. Yeah, I completely concur with, I'll do a quick favor every now and then for somebody, but we all get that all day long. Okay, can you just run a release out for me? No, I can't.
No, I can't. So folks, look, we're all grinding out there and we're all in different financial circumstances and family circumstances and professional circumstances. But I really wanted Doyle to, as he has already done, dial into how he went from running an agency to being part of a national firm to calling an investor and saying, hey, can we do something here? Again, not everyone has an investor in their back pocket or a business partner who can jump in and throw money at you. But if you watch what Doyle said, maybe there's an idea for you, something that he has said. Not everyone can start a newsletter that's going to stand out in the million newsletters that are out there. But, you know, Brian pointed out that he started it because it's something he wanted to appreciate, it fit with his personality, what he enjoys doing. Oh, and by the way, over time, it became something that he realized that other people weren't doing too. And then Joshua, over the last year and a half, has put content on 3 different platforms, LinkedIn, Substack, and some op-eds that have not only created that credibility, they've sharpened his thinking. And so I know that last line sounded like it was AI generated, but it was actually Dustin generated, sharpened his thinking, that he was able to really probably create more value than he could have 2 years ago because he took that time to think through, where do I stand out? And what are the ways, the platforms for me to try to stand out as well? And it wasn't just LinkedIn where everyone else lives. It was op-eds, which allow him, and I'll close on this, I'll pull a Doyleism. The accountant is the coolest person in the room of basketball players, but the basketball player is the coolest person in the room of accountants. It's because everyone else is saying the same thing. So don't try to if you're trying to get into healthcare or technology or carpentry, don't get into PR Week. No offense to that great outlet. Get into Carpentry Today. Get into TechCrunch. Get into the places where very few communicators are trying to be, because you will stand out to your target audience. So, and on that note, I should probably jump because I need more water and caffeine. So I will, I'll catch you all later. Thanks for joining us today. Come back next week. We're going to have 3 people who post jobs on LinkedIn who understand the nitty gritty of what jobs are looking like every week and every month. So come back next week for that as well. I don't have the time and date offhand, but I'll post the link when it's live in this thread. Thanks, folks. Have a good weekend.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.